Hey, what's going on, guys? I got Jardy Thomas, active duty Marine on Camp Pendleton. How you doing, sir?
How's it going? How's it going?
Thank you for bringing us your wisdom. We've got Anil Moore, also a Marine Corps veteran. She doesn't want to tell us when she got out. We'll have to look up her records. I'm going to try to get your DD 214 and check it out real quick.
Well, I'm surrounded by all these youngsters, so
So
just
check
know
it
that
out.
I'm old school.
We were just talking earlier, and how young is too young to buy a home? And wait, Anil, you were saying that when not just Marines, but whoever a service member gets in, the last thing, kind of like the last thing on their mind is buying a house, right?
Right.
What are they
It's a
thinking
very
about?
hectic time, right? You're going into boot camp, you are going to for Marines combat training, you're going from there to the next duty station where you're going to be getting your MOS training, and then you're trying to figure out where they're going to send you for the first duty station. It's a good at least year of very up in the air. So even if you're wise kid, right? Because we're assuming right out of high school, you really don't know the difference between your hair and your rear end.
Okay. So are you saying, Jody, someone that's been in 6 months, a year, is it too early to think about buying a home?
I think kind of going off of what you just said, it is a little bit early, but I really think the biggest friction that young Marines will have, or young any service member, whatever branch, will have is just the bear of the finances, the money wise. You don't really get
Hmm.
paid that much as a junior Marine, um, so couple that with your VAH as well, you're not going to be making that much money, and they're going to be taking a lot of that from their basic pay as well to subsidize,
Yeah.
the payment of that mortgage. So it's going to be really hard for them financially. Say even if they are dual military, they have a spouse at that young age, still it's not going to be very much money, and they're going to have, car payment and other things too. They're just not going to feel comfortable with purchasing that early in their career.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Very valid points. I did a loan a few years ago, it's about 6 years ago, to a young man. It was a Marine, and LES showed me it was a Lance Corporal. What is that, E4?
E3.
That's the E3. Okay. Um, he was 21, and we closed on a condo in Escondido at the time. This is 2017, 2018. The condo was like 300 grand. Don't ask me how he afforded it, but the guy was 21 years old. Now, I caught up with him about 4 years later. He was going to Okinawa. And I remember he called me. He said, I got about 150, 180 grand of equity in this thing. I don't know what to do with it. By the time he was 24 years old. Now, I don't remember how long he had been in, but could that not become the norm? Why is that? Why should that be so unusual and exceptional?
It would be a beautiful norm, right? It would be great that our service members took action that early to set themselves up financially. However, if you just go by my experience, my first duty station was overseas. Let's not forget that you have to be at your duty station. You have to be assigned, right? Before you can buy. So depending on your training and all that, that when you start, let's say at 18, 19 years old, you have at least a year to where you're stable and you know where you're going to be living. At that point, sure, you can buy. But as he was saying, you are making very little money. There is those exceptions of the Marines that, are married, are living off base, are getting BAH, BAQ. But if you are a young Marine and you're not married, you're living in the barracks and you're not getting that BAH, BAQ. That's an exception because it has to be authorized by your command.
Understood. Jardy, you're an active duty Marine. You're also a licensed mortgage loan officer, and you are a homeowner. Okay. And I know that because I did your VA loan a few years ago.
About four
And
years
you're
ago.
very happy.
Yeah.
You're very happy. I'm happy because as time has passed here in Southern California, you've been blessed with some equity. So my question to you is this: a Marine comes to you, or anybody, somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, man, I'm here for 3 years or 4 years or whatever. I am not going to buy in California because it's too expensive." What is that conversation that you're having with him or her?
So normally what I'll say, if they know if they're just now getting here and I approach them or they approach me and kind of, interested in the fact or very, nonchalant about it, maybe could convince them, I would start off first by saying, that BAH that you're giving away to go back, you're paying the same amount as someone that has a house out in town. So whether that BAH is 4 grand or 3 grand, that house that you're living in on base, like 3 bedroom, 2.5 bath, or whatever it might be, you can get that same thing out in town, but it'll be yours, and the Marine Corps will still pay for it. So kind of like just showing them that. And then another big question that comes up is, I don't want to buy now because I want to use my VA loan when I get out. And then I say, well, you can use your VA loan when you get out and you can use it now. And then most people say, oh, you can use it more than once. So I think the education of that's surrounding the VA loan and all of its benefits is really low still, even in this, time of knowledge is everywhere, it's still really low and around in the Marine Corps and in any branch, really, I would say. So just that
Are you
knowledge
saying,
there.
I'm sorry, to interrupt you. You're saying that you've had people tell you, um, I'm just going to use it when I separate from service, when I get out. And the reason they're saying that is because they think in their head that they can only use it once. Is that what you're saying?
That's a big one, yes. And then to add to that, there's another big excuse where I won't say excuse, but a scare that is they don't want to use any more of their BAH for a house payment. So whatever their BAH is, if they live on base, they don't have to spend any more money on housing, whether it's, gas to travel because they live on base, so it's, very minimum travel, and they don't have to pay for, utilities. Everything is encompassing in that, 3,500 or 4,400 if they're, a staff or above for BAH, then they can take all that money and then their basic pay is all theirs. They don't have to take any out of that money to purchase or to pay any bills.
Under what circumstances, Anil, I mean, Jody made a great point, right? Under what circumstances does it make sense for a service member to say, all right, all my BAH is going to be used for this housing payment that I just took on, VA loan, and then I'm going to come out of pocket X amount per month, and I'm probably going to commute. At what point in the career, I know this is a tough question, and this is not one size fits all, but when does that make sense?
I think if you have access to that BAH and you are authorized, whether you're a single Marine or you are married, and you can make it work, this is the long game. Real estate is the long game, right? So it may sacrifice a little today, but in the long term, the tax benefit, the write-ups that you get with all that, right? The equity, the community, everything that you form around that, the potential like that you get stationed somewhere else, and now you have an investment property. Okay, well, you could either keep your VA loan there, or we can, refinance it into conventional so that at the next duty station you can do it again. However, I feel that financial literacy, even though it's one of those required training in the Marine Corps, is not really taken seriously. It's it's very it's very nonchalant. It seems to be a topic that, at least in my experience in the time in the service, at that age, you're not empowered, you're not educated enough to understand the benefits that you can have with this VA loan for your future, not just for today. So like any other real estate, right? We have to look at it as the long game. Yes, the majority of time when you're buying a home, whether it's you with a conventional loan, me with a VA loan, you're going to pay a little more than rent. However,
Yeah.
you're going to catch up. That rent is going to continue to increase. Your principal, your interest, it's going to be fixed. That's not changing. So within a little bit of time, the little bit that you would have saved paying rent versus buying is going to catch up with you with equity, with the rental increase year to year. That's, I think, key for our service members to be able to see.
I like what you're saying. Jody, let me ask you, do you feel like the enemy of home ownership is comfort? Is it comfort? I'm so comfortable here on base. Yeah, they're taking my old $3,800. I'm not going to see a nickel of it probably, but I'm comfortable. I roll out of bed. I get to work in a few minutes. I don't have to commute. or is it something else? Is it affordability? What is the ultimate enemy of? Because what Anil's talking about is making a sacrifice, right? You're making a voluntary decision to become a homeowner that's going to cost you some money up front and on a monthly basis. Why would I do that when I can just be comfortable? What do you say to that, Jardy?
I'd say that's a really complex question. I guess it really depends on the individual. I would say a big driving factor, yes, is comfortability for sure. A lot of times Marines are, they don't want to take the especially for California, they're not going to be able to afford a home down in San Diego to, let's just say it's a family of, four or five. They're not going to afford a home down in San Diego or down in Camp Pendleton area in Oceanside. It's probably not going to happen. Because most of them, they have, it's just the active duty member that's working. The spouse is usually at home taking care of the kids. So they only really have one strong income that's coming in. So what they're going to have to do is, drive a little bit. Menifee, Marietta, those type of places to be able to afford a home that's going to be suitable for their family. And then that's going to tell that active duty service member to drive about, a good distance to get to work every day and every morning. And they're just not willing to make that sacrifice. Not everyone, obviously, but for the majority of service members, that's the kind of driving factor. Like they don't want to drive and sit in traffic all day just to, have a house. Um, so I think that
I hear
definitely.
you. It seems like it seems like there's a select few, almost like the remnant, that are like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to buy a house because I know the long term value of it. I'm going to make the sacrifice. Is that fair to say? You can't force this into someone's head, right?
I
They
don't,
either see it or they're not.
Yeah, I don't think you can force it. I think you can show them like, hey, this is like what I do for the most part is I show them what I did. Now, one could argue for the most part, I got, lucky, but I put myself in a position to get lucky. And what I mean by that is I bought, during COVID, as you know, in 2020, and I was coming out of pocket for my BH even at that time. But, my realtor and other people were telling me, hey, just buy the home, trust me, it'll work out. And the main driving factor for me was not just to own a home, it was out of necessity because I had started a family. So I needed a house. And I wanted one, of course, but I really more or less needed one. And I didn't want to rent anymore. So that's what was the main driving factor for me. So I think it depends on everyone's situation and of course everyone's, financial picture that they have individually. I wasn't, I didn't have the greatest financial picture, but I was able to fix it to get into a house. And then from there it just kind of really snowballed my financial, literacy in that sense.
It's
Brody,
outstanding.
I'm sorry, can I ask you
No,
a
go ahead.
question?
Yeah, of course.
Obviously, okay, I've been out of the Marine Corps since 2001, all right?
Okay.
Oh my goodness.
So when I say my experience, it's been a minute, right? But I seem to look back and in my experience, it was very much about leadership and about mentorship. The leaders, the staff NCOs, the the people that guided us in our career or that guided us in life, because that's really what they do when you're 18, 19 years old, right? They had a very big impact in my life. I was very blessed and I had amazing mentors. But I find that in leadership, when it comes to the service, that's where it can get passed down. That's where it can be influenced. That's where, if you have a period of instructions, right, a PME, and you state your Marines and you counsel them and you help them and you basically show them the light, that is the best option for me with these service members, with these guys, to really see and pay attention for a minute, because there's people like you said, right? You can use me as an example. You can see what I've done. Therefore, you would have more of an influence in these young minds.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you're a walking, talking reason for someone, even early in their military career, to take advantage of the VA home loan benefit and build wealth. I mean, you're not always going to be in active duty. You're going to get out one day. You're going to continue building your family. You're going to have a career in the civilian world, and but now what you started 4 or 5 years ago is gonna be there and fester in a good kind of way, and probably bring you to a point one day where you are financially independent on account of what you started 4 or 5 years ago with no money down. Is that not a fair statement?
Absolutely, definitely. I don't know if I should, say this now, but I actually, when I bought the home, I then took out I did a refinance, kept the same interest rate, you did it, and then I bought a fourplex up in Indiana. So
Wow.
it's just, and then I recently sold it, made a small profit, and then now I'm just kind of waiting on my next, venture that I would like to do with that money.
So
So
what you're saying is that using the VA home loan, which at the time was a challenging process, getting into being a homeowner, and then you leverage that to go build more wealth, right? Isn't
uh,
that the holy grail
it
of so last words of wisdom, Anel, for you, what are the advantages? Are there any advantages for a service member to wait until they get out to use their VA benefit?
I don't really think it's a service member issue. I've always said, not just because I'm in this business, but I've always said the best time for you to buy is as soon as you can. As soon as you can, because as soon as you can, you get into that home and you're going to start building equity and getting benefits from it. It's not about, it's not about just, being in the ideal position or waiting, because the reality is that if you wait 6 months, your your house just costed you 6 months more, meaning you still paid rent for 6 months. You still went on that higher price than 6 months ago, even if you buy at a higher interest rate six
Yeah.
today and 6 months the interest rate drops, then we do an earl.
Yeah.
But you're already in the game and you already have equity and you've already saved that money from giving it away to your landlord. So the sooner the better.
Historically, here's a whole nother conversation. We're going to wrap it up here in a minute, but historically, even through the recessions that we've had in this country, even through the recessions, home values have kept going up. Guys, I really appreciate the insight. I wanted to get this out there, share it with not just Marines, but any active duty service member that's thinking, they're on the fence. They're like, hey, I don't know what to do. Maybe I should buy. Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should wait till I go back home. It's too expensive here in California, whatever. Do I commute? All of these things are going through their head, and there's no one size fits all. But I really feel like some of the stuff that you touched on, guys, those are the relevant thinking points that they need to be thinking about and
absolutely.
making a decision.
I think so.
So, guys, I hope you found this useful. Anel Moore, Jody Thomas, both served, and their contact information is on the screen. I appreciate you guys giving us your insight. Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay.